Good morning, everybody. Happy New Year. Hope everybody had a good New Year. Sorry it took me so long to get the podcast together. This is the first episode of the Polar Opposites podcast. Thanks for coming. Thanks for being here with me. This is it's basically going to be a very big project of mine because it means a lot to me. So like I've told everybody, I'm really moving away from video game content. I think I'm moving away from politics because I have a calling, and I feel like I'm called to help people who have mental health issues. I've spent my entire life dealing with mental health issues, and so I know the struggle. However, I took a different route than many did, and we'll go more into detail on that here in just a moment in the podcast. But I did want to go ahead and just say that the whole reason for me making this podcast is I'm dedicating this to a friend of mine that died. His name is Greg Forrester. He died in my bedroom. Him and an old friend of mine that I'd known for about 20 years, they were dating, and she believes that she has a BPD as just like my ex, and I can say that I do see a lot of very similar tactics in the way that they maneuver, or what they do in relationships. It's very similar, and it's very sad to watch. And I will say this: anybody who's ever dated somebody who has BPD, for those of you guys who don't know, that's borderline personality disorder, or somebody who has a lot of BPD tendencies, it's a very, very, very hard relationship. It will test every boundary that you have, just like it did for Greg. And I watched it, and now I don't believe that it was on purpose by any means, right? But the tactics that were used and the cruelty that's used by people with BPD, because what they don't understand is they end up doing to others the very something very similar or the exact same thing that caused them to have borderline personality disorder in the first place. Borderline personality disorder is a personality disorder, for those of you guys who don't know. It's caused by a very specific type of abuse, and we know it as abandonment. And so these people often fear abandonment heavily. They have a hard time being alone. As a matter of fact, because of that very thing, that's the main reason why I don't think that my ex actually has borderline personality. So she does have a lot of tendencies about it, but I don't think that she actually has that disorder. I actually think she suffers from bipolar, just like I do. But so the whole point of this podcast is my dream. So over the last 5 years of being in service to my grandmother and taking care of my girlfriend while she was, out of a job and in a real deep depression and stuff like that, I found this just deep connection with being in service to others. It really, really kind of made me feel like I was making a difference, like I'm fulfilled in that aspect. And so one of the things I wanted to do was, I'm not a psychiatrist, right? I'm not a psychologist. However, I think my experience with bipolar alone and my uncanny knack for, self-reflection about everything, and what I used to think was an issue of overthinking everything, ends up being one of my greatest strengths. And that's because it allows me to analyze any issue that I might have. And so along with doing that, it also gives me the capability of analyzing everybody else that's around me as well. And it really kind of gives me an idea of being able to find the differences in people's, mental issues, their subconscious reactions, things like that. But so without further ado, I want to actually, before going any further, I want to just reiterate that I dedicate this whole podcast to Greg Forrester. And I'm dedicating it to him because he was a young man who went through a very narcissistic type abuse. And now I don't believe this is on purpose. That's the thing, because if it was something that could be helped, it would not be a disorder. And that's kind of, that doesn't mean it gives anybody the excuse to abuse someone. What it means is it has to be looked at differently than, say, somebody who's just a piece of shit. The sad thing is that my friend that I'd known for 20 years used some very, very horrible tactics on this man, and you can't convince me that he didn't commit suicide in my bedroom, and I really do believe that he overdosed on fentanyl because of what he was going through. I mean, this guy was a big guy, and to see him, he was a very nice guy, and to see him crying and stuff like that, and then, just, anyways, nothing can ever take the image of them flipping him over, right in front of me. I'm like standing literally on top of him almost, and they flip him over, his face all blue. It was wild. I was in shock, man, for a while, but I'm dedicating this podcast to him. And my goal is I want to open up a nonprofit facility that is going to be based around, instead of, because look, I come from this thought process that, the problem with a psychiatrist or the problem with psychologists and getting help from these people is that they actually don't know what it is to really have bipolar. They actually don't know what it really is to have BPD or schizophrenia, unless they themselves too have those disorders, which is often not the case. I don't think I've ever went and seen a psychiatric doctor or a psychologist that's got my condition. So it makes it very difficult for me to look at them in any other way than a prescription writing person. That's it, because the best advice I got was from people who have bipolar. The best information I got was from a man teaching Zen Buddhism, and he saved my life. After I became suicidal and tried to kill myself, in a really bad, bipolar depression that I was in back in 2018. And it's because of that reality and the fact that every medication I've taken, one tried to kill me, it was literally giving me what's called that I talked about earlier, where it's like, when I went and looked it up, it's like, what? Like, oh my God, like, hey, why am I taking this? Lamotrigine, it's for epilepsy, but these medications are so heavy, and the amount of damage that they're doing to our body, is not negligible, and then not to mention, there's kind of something to be said for the fact that every single time I see a suicide that comes from bipolar, it's somebody's medicated. You got Kurt Cobain, you got Robin Williams, you got what's his name from Soundgarden, you got Chester. Every one of them were on bipolar medication. Outside of bipolar, you have the transsexual community has the highest suicide rate out of the bipolar community. Guys, this is a product of jacking with the hormones and the chemicals in somebody's mind. If you look at like SSRIs, I'm a big advocate against SSRIs. I don't think that general practitioners should be able to prescribe any kind of SSRI, like depression medication. No. And that should not be our first go-to for anxiety. Our first go-to for anxiety should be lorazepam, in my opinion. I don't think that doctors should be, general practitioners should not be prescribing anything that's out of their field of study except for narcotics in certain circumstances like ADHD. Because amphetamine has a list of side effects that we're very well aware of. We know exactly what it does to the body over specific periods of time. Same thing with even opiates and basically all the narcotics. We know all that information. But SSRIs, though, we don't know what it's doing, what those medications are doing to the children. And then like, it's kind of interesting because I'm one of the generations that come from, the generation that first widely used contraceptive birth control. And then ironically enough, my generation is one of the most mentally fucked up generations that it is like the most mentally fucked up generation in history. It's the millennials. We have more mental health issues in the millennial generation than any other generation. Even the generations that went and fought a world war still don't have the same level of PTSD and the same level of ADHD, depression, bipolar, BPD that we have in our generation. And I think there needs to be something said for that. A lot of people aren't going, well, let's take a look at the contraception. Let's take a look at the birth control. I mean, look at the Depo-Provera. Now it's causing brain tumors and all this other stuff. I mean, guys, like people have this like this faith in medicine, and most people don't even know that on almost every it's literally every SSRI medication I've taken, and I've taken like 15 of them. Okay, every single one of them. If you read the little pamphlet that comes with the meds, or if you look on their website, it says, don't know how this exactly affects the brain, but we know it can help. I'm sorry, any medication that says that should not be FDA approved for anything. Especially because we don't even, a serotonin reuptake inhibitor, it's cutting off serotonin to some other part of the body to build up levels of serotonin in the stream. So, or in the brain. I mean, so it's like, what other functions of the body are you causing damage to by using these medications? So, I mean, that's something that should be asked, I guess, but I don't think anybody's asking it. So anyways, let's go ahead and dive in. I wanted to go ahead and bring awareness to, a few different things. So, a lot of you might go, hey, who the hell are you to tell me about mental health? Well, for those of you guys who don't know, my name is JD Moonen. And I have been diagnosed with bipolar 1 rapid cycle. I was diagnosed in 2018, and I had been suffering from, these cycles that we just all, my family and I, we just looked at it as normal. However, I've dealt with manic highs and depressive lows my whole life. But it wasn't until 2018 when I had a really, really, really bad manic episode. And the depression that followed is the reason why I went to seek help. I was very delusional. I was sleeping with this girl for my job. I worked for this company called Spectrum, and I was sleeping with this girl, and then I find out later on she's sleeping with my boss. And, I'm going to go into this later on in the episode, but, relationships are already a very touchy thing for what I've noticed for people with bipolar. We do, bipolar, I don't believe that it's just a genetic problem. I actually believe that it's a defense mechanism, just like BPD and the personality disorders of the cluster B complex. And when you're looking at bipolar, what triggers an episode is a trigger, right? And so what that tells me is that it's a defense mechanism of the brain. And it takes a lot of mindfulness and a lot of self-awareness to understand and figure out what those triggers are. I recognize that not many people have the ability to look at somebody and say, I have an episode coming on. It took me a long time to be able to do that. And I attribute a lot of that to my LSD use when I was younger. I did an enormous amount of LSD when I was younger. For an entire year, I ate LSD every day for a year. I mean, we're talking 20 hits, 30 hits and stuff like that a day. And that kind of LSD usage really gave me a mental fortitude that, I mean, is impressive even to my standards. I mean, it just is. It really made it to where, like, when I put my mind to something, it's going to get done. I already had a lot of that when I was a child. My mom will tell you about the story about, like, I'd see the knickknacks on the thing and I'd go over in my little walker to go up to these knickknacks and go to touch them. I would start crying before I grabbed these knickknacks, right? Because I knew I was about to get shit hit on my hand. And, it just goes to show you, I mean, like, what some people look and see with a disorder and they say, see, now that's a problem, because I kept going back for the knickknacks, right? Like, that was a problem. Well, yeah, now that I'm an adult, that is one of my strengths. The fact that I'm that hard-headed, and when I put my mind to something, I'm going to get it done. That ends up being one of your greatest strengths. So it's, that's one of the things about this podcast that I wanted to do was I want to show people that a lot of times what they think is a problem ends up being the biggest blessing of one of these disorders. So I want to talk about what is bipolar. Bipolar is a mood disorder. You have these mood swings. So there's 4 different types of bipolar. You've got 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1 being the worst, obviously. Rapid cycling is the worst of 1. And then 2 is, it's not quite as bad as bipolar 1, mainly because you have up to 1 episode a year. With bipolar 1, though, you do have an episode minimum every year. And the thing with bipolar 1 rapid cycle is that you have your mood can fluctuate throughout the day. And for those of you who have never seen it, I mean, I can be out there vacuuming or something. That just happened to me the other day, and they can just people telling me, hey, there's some hair here, I'm like trying to vacuum my dog hair and stuff. That by itself can set me off, and I have to walk away before it turns into this whole thing. And it's just because, like, nagging triggers me, that's just, it just does. My grandmother was, my grandmother, she was a little abusive at times. And one of the things that she did was nag. And it just absolutely drives me bonkers when somebody nags me. And so it just sets me off. And so I would find myself blowing up over that. And, what makes this a disorder is that you can't stop the initial blow up, right? But what you can do is you can stop yourself in the middle of the blow up. So it's a trigger, but it's like a gunshot, and that's the thing about, these disorders is that if we could control it, if we could stop it, it wouldn't be a disorder, right? Now what comes along with bipolar, so you have 2 and 3, bipolar types 2 and 3 virtually have, very little episodic problems. You do have these elevated hypomanic states that come with 2 and 3, 3 and 4, but 1 and 2 are the ones that, every doctor, every psychiatrist and psychologist will tell you that, in order to have a normal life, you have to be on medication. I disagree. One of the main reasons, the main drivers behind me getting on the microphone and making this podcast was because after I got diagnosed with bipolar, I tried a bunch of different medications. Notably, what the medications do is they lock you in depression, because the depression is easier to manage than the extreme mania. However, one of the things that I had done my entire life, and I learned this, after some self-evaluation, I've kept myself in a hypomanic state for most of my life. I actually really, really enjoy a hypomanic state. Now, the problem with the hypomanic state for a lot of people is that, doctors believe that that's just one step away from a mania. However, I think that they really just undervalue underestimate the power of the mind. If you have an ability of mental strength and mental fortitude, and you already do a lot of self-reflection, which I do believe that a lot of people with bipolar do, especially after you've seen your life get destroyed, I don't know, every year. You find connections that mean the world to you, but they're gone after an episode. You burn bridges with family members. During one of my psychoses, I literally walked 4 miles from my house to go and tell my stepfather that he was more involved in the responsibility of the death of his brother, who was killed at 13 by a jammed gun. Okay, and that he needed to repent. That had driven a wedge between him and I since 2022. When I had a major episode. Now, given my episode was triggered because of my girlfriend. She triggered it. I kept telling her that I was about to have an episode, and to stop. Please stop being mean to me. Please stop being cruel. And I don't know if she just didn't believe me or didn't buy it or what, but then she cussed me out and hung up on me, and then that was it, man. That was curtains. It's like a light switch, And the thing about a bipolar mania is you become a sociopath. Except you're more dangerous than a sociopath. A sociopath just doesn't care, right? Well, the problem with bipolar and its manic states is when you just want to feel one emotion, that's all you're going to feel. And if it's anger, things can get pretty crazy. You can just, not that you're going to go out and shoot somebody. It's just, you will absolutely just indiscriminately burn bridges if you're in an angry manic episode. And I've only had 2 of them in my entire life. And the last one I had, I put my girlfriend's stuff out of the street, before we broke up. I literally put her stuff out the street, and it was just, she asked for it. Okay. She pushed me to a point that I exploded, it's not, I warned her, but it is what it is. You can lead a horse to water. You can't make him drink. But these manic episodes, I really want to discuss those for a moment, because I think that the biggest reason why people go to medication is because they haven't actually went through an entire manic episode with no medication, just them. A lot of people in their family, my family was very different with me, and I was very lucky in this aspect. When you go into a bipolar psychosis, you're going to experience delusions, right? You're going to become delusional. You're going to create dots that aren't there. It's like imagine for a moment that you're the director of a movie, and your entire life is the movie, and everybody in it, you're writing the script of what they do and what they've done. Okay. And that's essentially what it is to, what it's like when you're in a bipolar manic episode. And so even if somebody has never stolen from you, if you somehow become suspicious of this person, then they're going to have stolen your bike back when you were 2. They're the guy who stole your garage door opener out of your car 15 years ago. That's how it is. It's like, you're like, really? Like, if you're looking at somebody and they have bipolar, you're like, yeah, but that dude doesn't even know you. He's only been around for like 3 months. Like, didn't you lose that back? And that's just how it is. But it's just, I also believe that it's a divine experience. Because I think that a lot of times when people go through these psychoses, I can tell you right now that the difference between the mind state that I'm in a psychosis was almost identical to that of the mind state I was in when I'm on LSD. Um, I mean, it's like the veil. You can just kind of just pull it to the side, and you're now in the metaphysical realm of the world, and you can see in it. You know, you can see the metaphysical part of the world. You can understand it. You can thread it like it's, you know, like it's a you know, or, you know, like it's like some kind of fabric that you're, you know, quilting or whatever. And I mean, what the ideas that you come up with when you're in a manic episode are, some of them are quite amazing. I mean, really, I mean, I've come up with some of the greatest business ideas of my entire life while I was in a manic episode. You know, I mean, what I ended up doing with YouTube back whenever, you know, I went viral, back in 2020 or 2019. That was, I came up with the idea when I was in a manic episode, in 2018. And so, anyways, my whole point of this is that I think that our understanding of a bipolar episode is vastly misunderstood. You know, I don't like the, oh, just put him on a pill. You know, that's just like somebody with ADHD. You know, I mean, because the way we handled ADHD when I was young, I actually thought I was stupid until I was 30 years old. You know, because you get raised with this notion that you have a learning disability. But in actuality, because these doctors don't have ADHD, because they don't know the benefits of this so-called disorder, right? They don't know about your ability to hyper focus. So yeah, ADHD is a major learning deficit whenever it's something you don't want to do, when it's something you don't like. But if it's something you're interested in, you can be an expert in a week. In and out. You can sit there for 18 hours a day studying that subject. And within a week, you know everything about it, and you can be an expert on the subject. And this is the ability of every person who has ADHD. Every person. They have the ability to stay focused on something at much greater lengths than somebody who doesn't have the disorder. You know, bipolar. You know, there's this thing that you understand when you start reading philosophy, and notably Eastern philosophy. In Eastern philosophy, it's recognized that the human brain understands everything in a dualistic nature. That means that there has to be something else to compare it to, or we can't understand it, right? So, for instance, that means like we wouldn't be able to see a picture hanging on the wall if there was no space around the picture, and we wouldn't be able to see the space that's around the picture if there was no picture, right? So, in order for us to differentiate the two, even though at the very base level, you know, even to the, when you get to the smaller than the atom level, right? It's everything is of one substance. It's all one thing. It's all energy. Everything is energy. Being that that's the case, you know, in reality, everything around us is one thing. We're all the same. We're all a part of this one thing that is the universe, right? But the way that the energies manifest themselves give us the illusion that we're all separate from these things, you know, and our understanding with our brain, because of, I'm assuming the right and the left lobes, you know, things like that, we understand things in a dualistic nature, meaning without its opposite, we can't understand, we can't comprehend it. Okay, there has to be something that is opposite of it. Okay, in comparison, and so that's why we have these ideas of good and bad, you know, divine, evil, things like that. Does those things actually exist? No, I mean those are concepts that we've created with our language, you know, in order to speak. They're all just ways of talking. That's all they are. But in the physical world, there is no such thing as a good or bad thing. You know, I mean, does a wolf feel bad about eating its prey? No. You know, but we somehow, for whatever reason, feel bad about eating cows. Some of us do, anyways. I mean, they're weird. People are like that. But they're weird, but I mean, I definitely don't feel bad about it. But I like a good steak. But the whole point of me saying that is that, it's these kind of understandings that really allow for psychotherapy to emerge. And they come out of Eastern philosophy. Western philosophy typically runs into the creationist issue, where there's the creationist issue is also in Eastern philosophy, but it's understood in a different way. Like in Western philosophy, they believe that there's a little man, a puppet master, right? Whereas in Eastern philosophy, it's more of everything grows from this one thing that would be considered God or nature or whatever. And so that's kind of the foundation of my understanding of God is God has some control over events and things, but it's more loving in a way that it provides the atmosphere for never-ending growth. And that's God. Okay, and everything grows from God because everything is God, right? That's my understanding of the universe and of consciousness, if you will. So that's gonna, I'll be able to really kind of put it all together for you as we continue on with the podcast. In later episodes, I'm gonna really really go into what it is for my belief system, how I understand bipolar, just consciousness in general. But I found that the man by the name of Alan Watts, if you guys have never heard of him, he's the man who saved my life. I spent, I talked to my grandmother, before she died, of course. And in 2018, I ended up leaving treatment early because, like I was saying just a minute ago, I went into, treatment. Hold on 1 second. All right, sorry about that. But so anyways, I went into treatment in 2018. I ended up leaving because, I just felt like the doctors wanted to put me on more and more medication. And it just, what was funny was I was getting the most help out of the treatment was from the group dialectical behavioral therapy that I was in. There was this, sorry about that. I got one leg on this chair over. But, I was in this therapy group, and just being able to talk about it really helped me out more than anything else out of anything I was going through, because being able to sit down and talk with people about the experience that you have and other people have this issue, because when I was young, my parents were like the beat it out of them, and that's just all they knew. And so like, I was certain ways, I had certain ways of being, and that was just how I was, I tried every way possible to quit these certain things, and I just never could. And so that created in me this atmosphere where I was constantly feeling inadequate, right? I was constantly not okay with who I was because there was something wrong with me. So when you say that somebody has a mental disorder, you're now implying that there's a problem. And I think that the thing that needs to be understood is there's not actually a problem. What there is a different personality. Okay. Yeah. Now there are a different way of being than what people consider normal. But my question is what is actually normal, right? I still to this day have never been able to fully comprehend or understand what people call a normal mental state, because every person in the world is fucking weird, okay? Or has some kind of problem, and a lot of it is, some people have just have bigger issues than others, they have harder times coping with things than other people. Now, notably, I do understand that, yes, psychosis for bipolar is very real, but you can put it in remission. I remember I was told since 2018 that it was impossible to, one, put bipolar in remission at all, okay, because that's unheard of. You can't do it. That's what they said. And the only way to lessen the problems with bipolar is medication. Bullshit. Okay, medication doesn't do anything but make me depressed and want to die. Okay, that's what it does. Or make me extremely fat, hollow, and I have no imagination. It completely destroys any ability to create, which is one of the most beautiful things about bipolar. Like 80% of the actors in the world have bipolar. Musicians, poets, book writers. All of your artists, these amazing pieces of art that you have, come from people with mental issues, with mental problems, what we would consider, mental disturbance of some kind. And that beauty comes because it's the understanding of the Taoists, okay? The people, the yin yang, the whole philosophy that created the idea of the yin yang is from a philosophy called Taoism. Taoism believes that for everything there is an equally as powerful or as big opposite, right? Like that's kind of like the best way to put it in layman's terms. And so that's where the idea of the yin yang comes from. It's to show you that everything is one thing. However, we perceive it as black and white, right? We perceive it in a dualistic way. But it's one thing. It's actually, there's nothing more to the truth. It's absolutely 100% the truth. And so the whole point of Taoism is to learn the middle way. It believes that for to have a good life, to have a balanced life, one must seek the true middle way. So the whole point is to not be too good, not be too bad, right? Not eat too much, not eat too little. It's all about that perfect moderation of everything in life will produce a balanced and controlled person. This is the same thought process that is in what's called Zen Buddhism. The difference between Zen Buddhism and Tibetan Buddhism is that Tibetan Buddhism focuses more on the meditation side. And it also believes Buddha is a deity, which Buddha specifically said, I'm not a god. That being said, Zen Buddhism is, as Alan Watts so eloquently put it, it is the first form of psychotherapy that has ever existed. And we can see this today because our entire psychology idea, our whole basis for psychology and arguably psychiatry is that of Buddhism. That's why if you look at every single coping mechanism that is brought to you from the Western world, every one of them are a different form of practice in Buddhism with just a different name. So that way you don't go searching about, you don't go read about meditation. They give you just enough information about meditation. They tell you, and ground yourself. Well, they don't tell you where that whole idea came from. The reason why they don't is because they're not going to make any money if they don't not tell you where it came from, because you can go to a Buddhist monastery and you can get, in my opinion, a better psychotherapy and dialectic behavioral therapy for every form of mental issue in a Buddhist monastery than you could ever get in a psychiatric ward. The whole point of psychiatric ward, in my opinion, is give him a shot in the ass and put him over there where he can't hurt anybody or bother anybody. Where he's not a problem, right? They're in and of itself creating an even bigger problem in society, which is what we have with my generation, where you have all of these people who are in their 30s, who have these mental conditions. They're tanked up on God only knows how many different medications, because every single part of their psyche, of the way that they're feeling about life, okay, is a problem, and it needs to be dealt with. And so we're going to put them on something so they don't feel that. So now we have a whole generation of basically zombified people who are hollowed out with hardly any personality. Okay. And what personality they do have probably isn't even theirs. It's part of their namesake that was given to them at birth. They've lost complete touch with what it is to be a human being. I mean, my generation has some of the biggest drug addiction numbers in history. I mean, even rivaling that of the Vietnam era, which is absolutely sad. We have an enormous amount of people with PTSD from relationships. I mean, we have some of the relationships in my generation are, I mean, is almost, you might as well just not even do it. I mean, because everybody is either tanked up on drugs, some kind of addict. All they care about is sex, and they're extremely self-involved and selfish. I mean, you could never rely on basically anybody from my generation to be a good mate. It's very rare you'll find one. And that, I believe, is because of the work that Big Pharma's done with the prescription drugs. I mean, there's numerous problems. And the whole point of this podcast is I want to open up this nonprofit foundation that it's gonna provide a facility for people to go to that is not providing medication. I don't want to provide. I don't want a facility that would provide any antidepressants or anything like that. I mean, maybe if we could have a doctor on staff, like just to like provide lorazepam or some kind of narcotic for acute issues, or to help somebody who might need help with focus and things like that, because amphetamines do help with that. Period. They are proven. That being said, I mean, that's all that I would allow prescribed at my facility. It's just because there's just, I hear so many issues with antidepressants, and when somebody's on an antidepressant, all you're saying to me is I don't know who I am. You're saying to me, I think I have a problem. Well, who has a problem? First and foremost, the fundamental issue is that you think you actually exist. You think that there is a you to have a problem, just like you think that you can change. Well, you can't. Okay, and I can tell you right now that no matter how hard you try, you cannot change anything about yourself. And I know there's going to be people in the comments going to be like, "Oh, yes, you can. I did this, I did that." No, you didn't. No, you didn't. You didn't actively do any of that shit. You tell yourself you did because you want to give yourself the credit. It makes you feel good about yourself. But at the end of the day, just in the same way, I quit drinking. I used to drink a 12-pack a day and a half a handle of Jack Daniels almost every day. Okay, I used to smoke. I was a pack a day smoker for 15 years. I tried for years, 5 years. I tried to quit smoking. Okay. And 3 or 4 years before that, for the 3 to 4 years, I tried to quit drinking. And I can tell you right now, for as long as I was trying to quit either one of those things, I never did. Then one day I just woke up and I quit smoking and I quit drinking. I just woke up one day and I just didn't feel the desire to do it anymore. Because I gave up on, I just gave it to the universe, right? I just gave it away. I said, you know what? I said, I give up. I can't, I don't know why I can't quit. I've tried and I can't. And at that moment, I released the burden I was putting on myself to quit, because I was looking at me bad. I was the bad guy. It's really funny because when Alan Watts was talking about this very thing in one of his lectures, he goes, it's very important to not tell the devil, what you're going to do, because, he's an archangel. He's very clever. And so it's imperative that if you have an ailment like drinking too much or something, you want to quit doing that, it's imperative that you don't tell the devil what you're trying to do. Because who do you think the devil is? And it's so important to understand that, because people, it's like people for whatever reason feel that they're separate, like they're a thing inside of a meat suit feeling feelings. Okay. You're not a feeler feeling feelings. You're not a thinker thinking thoughts. You are the thoughts. You are the feelings. You are all of those things happening at one time. That's you. And so when you have a problem with one of your thoughts, when you have a problem with one of your feelings, that's the ego. That is a fake sense of separation, a fake sense of yourself being somehow in some way separate or indifferent to these feelings, to these emotions that you're having, to these thoughts that you're experiencing. The whole point of meditation is to show somebody that you can't, anytime I ask somebody what the point of meditation is, they tell me, they go, oh, well, it's to stop, what do you call it? It's to stop, to stop your mind, to calm your mind, to get you to stop thinking so much and stuff. I said, no. I said, that's what they tell you because it's believed and understood in Buddhism that a fool that persists in their folly will become wise. And so long as you believe that you can stop your thoughts, then you're going to be trying to stop them forever. It's not until you realize you can't stop them that you finally reach nirvana. Because when you finally give up on trying to stop that chatter in your mind, and you finally realize that there is no controlling your mind, there is no controlling your thoughts, your emotions, there is no controlling any of that. Then you're not going to have any more problems. When you finally recognize this, then it's like, what was a condition, a psychiatric condition, right? Like bipolar, things like that. It just kind of goes away, just kind of goes to the wayside. It's amazing the power that somebody gets when they learn the art of acceptance. When you learn to accept things for what they are, life just somehow gets really easy. You can be the person who believes that, you're separate from the world and everything is happening to you. Or you can be the person that believes that everything that's happening is a product of your choices and decisions, is a product of you. Both views are absolutely correct. Okay? Because that's the thing about life, is that you can view it as in you're the one that's doing everything. You're the one that caused every issue in your life. You're the one that caused this and that. Or you can look at everything in the victim mentality, and you can look at everything as though it's being done to you and that you had absolutely no control and no way of stopping any of it, because that's completely correct as well. Both ideals and both standpoints are correct. It's just a lot of us have realized that it's empowering to believe that you can control all these things, which in reality we can't. We don't control anything. None of us know when we're going to die. None of us have, we don't have an expiration date and going, okay, so on March 3rd, 2050 is when I'm going to pass away. None of us know. You could walk out of your house tomorrow morning and get hit by a plane. And it's just understanding those things will really help you if you have these disorders. One of the things that I want to touch base on in this episode today is I want to talk about bipolar and its relation and its involvement in relationships. One of the things I found to be a commonality for people with bipolar is obsessing over their mate in relationships, or what's interesting is I found that for men, women have this uncanny ability to send a man off into a manic episode if they're bipolar. As a matter of fact, the vast majority of my bipolar episodes have been caused by a woman. And, I watched my best friend. I'm going to bring him onto the podcast. I'm going to interview him here in the near future. And it's so important that I get this man on the podcast because he went through a psychosis last year. I think it was last year. It was last year or like 2022. I think it was last year. And him and his wife had went to France. Well, he went into a bipolar episode the day they were leaving for France. And so I started noticing he was very agitated. He seemed very out of sorts that day, more than normal. Because when you have bipolar, you're always kind of out of sorts in some way. But I mean, that day he was off. Seemed very agitated and just, that's pretty indicative of an episode for a lot of people. Is they typically become agitated, argumentative, very combative. Is a commonality with bipolar. Well, I kind of noticed this, but I second guessed myself, and I didn't say anything before he left because I was like, nah. I mean, maybe he's just stressed out. But I knew because he was doing exactly what I do right before I have an episode, right before. I'm sorry, I'm already having an episode at that point. It's right before that episode actually just really rears its teeth. You know what I'm saying? And it's like full on delusion city. And me, I'm very self-aware. I've got a very, very strong mental fortitude, and so I'm able to keep it together in a bipolar. Like, one of my buddies looked at me and he said, man, what happens? I remember he said something along the lines of like, how, what do you tell somebody when you have an episode? I looked at him, I said, well, I just look at people and I say, well, I'm having a bipolar episode. You want to go get some lunch? And he was like, what? And because that's just unheard of to him. He wasn't, I mean, this guy's like my best friend, man, Alex Bildu. And he can't literally, he wasn't in the space with his family or his wife to ever look at somebody and go, I'm having a bipolar episode. Let's go get something to eat. You want to go to Slotsky's or something? Because instead, no, he's a problem and he just needs to be put away until it's over. And that's no way to deal with it, guys. That's no way to deal with it. Put yourself in his shoes. How do you think he feels? And what is the precedence that's set in his mind that he's living with right now and he will live with for the rest of his life? Every time you tell him, oh, you need to go to the hospital. We need to make sure you get a shot in the ass, and until this blows over, I can't handle you right now. You understand what that does to somebody? Telling somebody, oh, you're just overreacting, you just need to go get some help. Or, oh, you sound retarded right now, or whatever. These are comments that you hear all the time when you have bipolar. You get dismissed because you're a problem, or, oh, he's crazy. You don't want to deal with him. It's like, thanks for the compassion. And see, that's the problem with psychiatric care, psychologists and all that over in the United States, is that these issues, and I think it's time we revolutionize this, these issues cannot be understood by anybody but someone who deals with it. I'm telling you that right now. Just like in order to get the right kind of therapy, I personally believe, for somebody who was the partner of somebody with borderline personality disorder or narcissistic abuse, narcissistic personality disorder, or, narcissistic rage disorder. Anybody who is the partner of one of those people cannot get an adequate therapy, or cannot get an adequate understanding of a trauma bond from somebody who has never experienced it. That in and of itself is extremely important. One of the things I saw a psychiatrist say actually on Quora one day about BPD was, when you go look at the forums on Quora or any of those other websites about BPD, you just have all these people talking mad shit about people with borderline personality disorder. And they're saying all this stuff, and like when I go look at it, I'm like, actually, that sounds like narcissistic personality disorder. It does not sound like BPD. They do react very similar, right? But from my experience with somebody with BPD, they're not promiscuous, from my understanding. You know, I mean, like my own insecurities will have me thinking that they are, right? But that's my own insecurities. In reality, they're very reclusive. And I mean, my last, she didn't like to be touched by anybody. And so that actually caused issues between her and I a lot because, you know, she had problems with affection, with showing or giving affection, you know, and, you know, it was a lot of the time it felt very, very much like sexual. And that was kind of like all, you know, but that's because she, you know, when you have somebody in that situation, they don't know what love is, right? Like they've never actually felt love. Their idea of love, which is why these relationships are so difficult. Their idea of love is abuse, right? It's abuse and reward, abuse and reward, abuse and reward. That is their idea. And so they get locked in these cycles of relationships, somebody with BPD. And so you have, because they get locked in these cycles, and when they get with somebody who doesn't have BPD or doesn't have narcissism, right? And so they're not being abused by this person, then they become the abuser because that's all they know, right? And so then they start abusing, you know, and so, and they love bomb and stuff like that. And the thing is, you know, you can talk all this mad shit, but the reality is you're not even touching the problem. The problem is the parent. That's what created that, you know, and I feel pity for those people, because if you ever saw BPD on the level that I had, you know, and luckily God, you know, the universe, the spirit, God, all that has gifted me with the brain that it has. And I was able to analyze, and really help her with her BPD. I was able to do that during our relationship. And that's something I'm very proud of, because I just wanted to see her heal. I just wanted to see her get better. Now, whether that means she's going to be in a relationship with someone else or me or whatever, you know, I just want her to get better so she can have a successful relationship, so she can even love at all. Right, because right now she can't love. She can't love anybody because she doesn't even adequately understand what love is. Her mom does it. You know, they just, you know, like she comes from a household that they just tolerate each other. You know, her ex was before me was extremely abusive. You know, he's drunk and all kinds of stuff. And it's just it's. My whole goal with that relationship was to heal her, because I knew that if I was able to help her with that, if I was able to get her the help she needed, to help heal those scars and the damage that it was done by past trauma, you know, of being raped and, you know, just family not giving her, you know, just abusing her and shit like that, man, you know. And I went through I was no stranger to that trauma. It's just the way that my brain handles it versus hers manifested in two different ways. Mine manifested as bipolar disorder, and hers manifested as borderline personality disorder. But I was molested and taken advantage of at the age of 16 by a 40-year-old man. You know, I was abused my whole life, you know, physically and mentally. You know, I legitimately thought I was stupid until I was 30 years old. You know, and then when I was 30, I realized that I was a genius, and then that went to my head, and then I became arrogant. And then I had one of the biggest times of success of my life, followed by one of the most horrible downfalls, you know, pitfalls I've ever had because of my arrogance. And that was because I thought I was stupid up until I was 30. And then when I found out how intelligent I was, I became very arrogant. And I thought I could do no wrong. And when that happened, you know, I had major pitfall. But I also was able to, through my experience, was able to get, for 4 years, from 2018 until 2022, it wasn't until the end of 2022, I went those years without having one episode. during that time frame. I held myself in where I like to be at, which is a hypomanic state. It's a state where I feel uplifted. It's, you just have a lot of energy. You're just very ready to go. And what's interesting about in particular, the way my body works in particular, is I'm an insomniac. And so one of the things that puts people in a bipolar psychosis, the psychosis is often fought with sleep, right? And that's because sleep deprivation is one of the main driving factors of any psychosis, period. That's why you see a lot of meth heads. They go into psychosis because of that. Well, not every person is built the same. That's why we can't sit there and say every person needs 8 hours of sleep a night. You can't blanket statement things like that, because I actually get like 2 to 3 hours of sleep every night. It's very rare that I get 8 hours of sleep. And it's because I'm insomniac. I've tried multiple different forms of medication. And no matter what I do, I can't sleep until I just pass out. And so I often find myself sleeping in my computer chair. Literally almost every night. Actually every night I'm sleeping in my computer chair. The only time I would lay down in bed was whenever I have a significant other. Because otherwise I just, if I have somebody to cuddle up next to and to lay down with, and have some intimacy and have some shoulder time, pillow time with, then I'll lay down. But outside of that, man, my computer chair is comfortable as hell. And no matter what I do, I can't turn off my brain. It just doesn't shut off. So I just let it run until it can't run anymore. But, basically, I found through my practices, and this was because I went to my grandmother, and I asked her back in 2018, I said, hey, can you give me a year? I said, I have a little bit of savings. Now, the problem was like I had like $7,000 in savings, right? But, one of the biggest problems with bipolar is that we end up going out and spending every dime we have. And you ask me, and it's like, oh, I never had that money in the bank. And, we did, but we have no idea what happened to it. It's like you go on this frivolous spending, back to what I was saying about my best friend, Alex Bildo. He recorded his entire bipolar psychosis almost. And that's so important this day and age because it's a reference. It gives us something to work with. It gives people the ability to see what it's like from the standpoint of the person experiencing the psychosis. What was so amazing about my experience with this disorder is that my family has been very, very supportive. I thank my mom. Shout out to my mom, Deborah Woodall. She's a wonderful woman. My mother, she and my family kind of took things differently. They didn't, as soon as I had an episode, they didn't go, oh, we need to take you to the hospital right now. We need to get it. No, they didn't do that. Instead, they let me handle it. They let me go through the experience of a psychosis. Now my psychosis in 2022, my girlfriend threw me in jail, while I was in my psychosis. Now, given I didn't even do the crime, I was outside in the cul-de-sac. Okay, didn't even get a warning that apparently there was a harassment case open against me, which, I might add, it was dismissed because, it's hard to say you're harassing somebody when you're enticing them. You know what I'm saying? When you're being just a cold-hearted bitch and then acting like you did nothing. And that's what was happening to me. She was just being extremely abusive and mean and cruel, and then acted like I was just, oh my God, like he just will not stop calling me. And it's like, yeah, the bombastic side eye is like a thing for that. You're like, really? So the way you just treated me has nothing to do with why I'm pissed off right now, right? Nothing to do with that, right? Nothing to do with why I'm irate. Okay, it has nothing to do with the fact that you had a man answer the phone and we hadn't even been broken up a week, right? That has nothing to do with any of that. That's not why I'm irate, right? I'm irate because I'm just crazy. And that's, but see, at face value, somebody with BPD plays the victim. I mean, dude, they are, dude, they will do something to you, and then somehow it's your fucking fault. I mean, it's like, you're like, what? You're like, hold on a minute. You're like, what? I mean, that's like literally what happens. You're like, wait, did you just, and now it's my fault? It's literally one of those. It's the way that they can change any situation and make it your fault is I mean, dude, I mean, they need a fucking, a medal. I mean, they need to have, what is that? The Nobel Prize, okay, for playing the victim. It needs to go to any person with BPD. I'm not even playing. I mean, it is absolutely astronomical how insane it is. I mean, and I've got bipolar, and that's really saying something, because I mean, we can like create some delusions, right? Like we can, like, I mean, I remember like when I was just starting to have an episode, and I called up Alex, and I was like, so my girlfriend and I we had like broken up, right? Well, I had like loaned her my card to get, a what do you call it, a rental car, right, from Hertz, and so I'm sitting there, and the next thing I know, I get like this. We went. I turned the car in with her, right, and so we like turned the car in, and then like, then they only charged my card for the $50, but the next thing I know, like 2 weeks later, I get charged $500 fucking dollars. I was like, whoa, I was like, what? I was like, what is this? So I ended up like, they were like, they called the insurance adjuster, and they were taking too long. So I just went and disputed that damn thing, right, and I just got rid of the charge. Well, the next thing I know, like when I disputed it, they like replaced my card. Okay. Well, so my other card comes in, and I left it on my bed, and I like left to go do something, and my girlfriend was the only person at the house. Well, she was leaving to go do something. Well, then we ended up getting into it, shortly thereafter, and we split up. I mean, that was her go-to, was just like, anytime I had an issue, it's just breakup city, right? I mean, you end up becoming just so immune to the breakup. Are you like, okay, so how long are you gonna block me for 3 weeks, for a couple of days? I mean, just an hour? How long am I being blocked this time? It like became my normal. Okay, I mean, I'm being honest with you. That was my normal everyday relationship was, oh yeah, we had some constructive criticism today for Amanda. So, I got blocked, and right now she's not talking to me. Because I established, I held one of my boundaries, and I just made it very clear she crossed it, and so I'm not going to hear from her for about 2 weeks. And that's literally like, I mean, that became my normal. Anyways, that being said, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here. Sorry, where was I? Hold on just a second. But ADHD at its finest, right? Ladies and gents, here it is. One of those disorders right here. I'm sorry, I forgot what I was talking about. No, but anyways, so, it's like, yeah, it's gone. I was there. Things were going great. I mean, it was really into it. And then, I mean, it's like a fart in the wind. It's poof, it's just gone. Just like that. I mean, it's like, did anybody else smell that? Yeah, that was my train of thought. Anyways, I guess what I'm getting at is it's just, I guess we'll go from here. When you're looking at these disorders, they all look like trauma. That's what it is. It's the way my mind manifested its defense against trauma. Whether that's, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, narcissistic abuse disorder, I mean, people go, oh, well, cluster B disorders are much harder to deal with because there's no medication that they can give them to help them with that. And it's like, I look at them, I go, there's no medication that anybody can give you for bipolar to help you with that either. Okay? Because all the medications do is put you in depression and you want to die. Okay? And it gets rid of any semblance of life that you have, any uniqueness about your personality just disappears. So the person that you manifest to as in the world becomes this husk of a human while you're on those meds. I don't care who you are. You can have people who take that stuff every day. And if that's what you want to take, I'm not telling you to quit your medication. I'm just telling you that the person that you are off that medication is significantly different. The imagination you have when you're off of that medication is significantly different because it exists. I believe that the medication allows you, if you have bipolar, allows you to do the mundane. One of the things that I've noticed about bipolar is structure is over-structured environments. So the corporate America almost becomes, and now this is for your average normal person, right? Quote unquote normal person. We find that they're taking drugs to be able to work a job, in the corporate world. And the thing is about bipolar is you end up having, when you have bipolar, you start a job somewhere. You become the best employee on the team. You're the best performer for 6 months straight. And then the next thing you know, you find a reason to hate your job because there's too much structure, right? And that's what's actually triggering this, but you don't know until you've sat down and you've realized that this is what's causing these episodes. So then you just either get in a fight with your boss and get fired, or because you just be a combative dick, right? And then right after that, then you go into a full blown episode, right? But I mean, you're already on the way there, right? Because you're getting ready to blow at your seams because you're bottling up all of this compression from this controlled environment. Because you're such a free spirit, you can't be controlled, right? And so when you are controlled, it makes you go insane. It makes you go absolutely insane. And I've noticed this with bipolar. It's the job. Every single time I have had a major episode in my adult life was typically because the stresses of work end up becoming so overwhelming. Because every person with bipolar, we end up overperforming a lot of the time. We get like super excited about our job, and we're like going, and we're like, dude, you're like the number one employee, and then for like 6 months running, and then next thing you know, you're fired. Or you're fighting with the bosses or something, and you can't help it. You can know that you're going to do this, and you still can't stop it from happening because it's a part of who you are. And when I finally understood this, I went to the most successful period of my life. The most successful period of my life was between 2019 and 2021, going into 2022. I had the most successful 2 years at that time of my life. I made over $220,000 in that time period. I made $62,000 in 1 month on YouTube, and then from there, I ended up becoming really good in the stock market, and selling commodities, trading commodities and stuff. And then I went too far out on margin one day for a swing trade. I was aiming to make $1 million off this trade, and in a single night, I watched the stock market just plummet because we ended up getting some information about the Fed came out at like 3 a.m. in the morning. For any of you guys who know that, I was like with TD Ameritrade at the time. They don't offer pre-market until I think it's like 6. And this news came out at 3, and by the time the pre-market started at my brokerage firm, my account was already 50%, at 50%. By the time the opening happened, everything plummeted, and I went into that 20% buffer, and I got margin called, and every share I had got sold. And after it was all said and done, I had like, I think it's like 10 or 15, maybe $20,000 left out of like 200 grand. It was like right under, it was like 100, like I had like 185,000 or something like that. And, I lost everything. I mean, this experience, like I got in my truck. I had a badass truck that I ended up having to sell, while I was caring for my grandmother because of the trials I went through during that time period were just so hard. I can't even, my awakening was very difficult, man. My awakening to spirituality was just out of this world. I mean, it was just out of this world, what I went through. And every awakening's like that. But so, anyways, so it's like, I actually went through all of that. I went through like over half my awakening too, like these trials, like if you've ever read the story of Job in the Bible, I went through like that. The only thing I didn't have was children, right? But I mean, like I had everybody in my family turned on me. I was being accused of stealing from my grandmother. I mean, it's like everybody around me had like forgotten who I was. Like, I was like, did you guys like what the hell? Like, did everybody forget about, like, I was raised by y'all with the same moral compass as the rest of the family, and thou shalt not steal is still very much a part of who I am. And, it was like, that was like just forgotten. And it was, it wasn't until my girlfriend was abusive and she moved out. When I was there now with no support and no help, I lost it. I ended up, while I was on the phone with her, she said some things to me, hung up on me, and I snapped. I mean, I remember I hit myself in the head so hard. I had a goose egg on my head. Do you remember my mom saw me like a couple days later? She's like, what happened to your head? I was like, I got in a fight with myself. And she was like, what? I was like, yeah, I hit myself in the head. And she was like, why would you do that? I said, because it keeps me from destroying anything. And actually in that during that episode, I couldn't. I ended up destroying, the cabinets in my bathroom. I just took them and just slammed them until, they just busted. It was, I lost it, man. I just went crazy. I started getting these delusions. It was crazy. And then that, all this ends up like, I ended up going through it was like 4 or 5 episodes over this time period because my job quit paying me. Like all of this egregious stuff happened to me at one time, and all during like a 6 to a year period. My job wasn't paying me. I was being discriminated against while I was at work for having bipolar. On top of that, like my grandmother was dying. I was, the only caretaker for her for almost 2 years. My family was just really tied up with a bunch of other stuff. I remember at one point, I was like begging my mom. I called her. I was actually screaming at her one day on the phone, telling her like, I don't get any time with my girl. Like largely my family drove a wedge between me and my girlfriend. Whether they meant to do it or not, they did. And it was because I was being ignored because my sister, for whatever reason, my family thought that it was more important to take care of my sister who was causing inflicted fucking problems for herself because she's cheating on her husband and all this other stupid shit at the time. That my family just thought it was like, oh, well, her kids, it's like, yeah, well, her kids being affected by that is that's part of the learning process of her not doing it again, was that she had, that the kids are going to be affected, just like I told my mom, I was affected by all your shitty choices. You know what I'm saying? Like, why is she any different? She's not. I was like, but here I am. I'm the only person here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, caring for your dying mom. And nobody will help me. I mean, it was just me there. I was doing working full time. I was doing the cooking, the cleaning, the lawn work, the maintenance, the grocery shopping, the bills. I was doing everything by myself, and I mean, people go, well, you have to do that anyways if you're single and you're a homeowner. It's like, hold on, dude. I said, being single and a homeowner is much different than being single, basically a homeowner, and caring for somebody dying from dementia. That is a whole different ballgame. That's diapers being changed. That's essentially, you have somebody who is inept. They have no ability to do anything. I mean, and then right before that, I mean, my girlfriend fell into a deep depression, and, after she lost her job, I was, I was caring for her daughter. I did everything in that department. I took care of her daughter when she couldn't. I took care of her. I was making her breakfast every day, bringing her coffee every morning, making sure she had money when she lost her job to go do whatever she wanted to do. And I just wanted her to heal and to get better. But that turned into, I didn't know she was an addict until it was too late. And for me to think about that really makes me sad. Because I've never loved a soul in this world as much as I have loved that woman, as much as I do love that woman. There's just the bond that you create with somebody with BPD is absolutely mesmerizing, because they become your lover and your dependent at the same time. It's very weird. It's a whole different type of relationship. It's like they're your lover and your child at the same time. You can't. There's no way to describe it. You just can't describe it in words. But so anyway, I mean, going through all that, and then the breakups, the constant breakup. I mean, I finally had an episode. But it had been 4 years since then, and I haven't been medicated since 2018. I still to this day am not medicated for it. Sometimes I think it causes more issues. Some issues for me it does. Like getting over stuff. But through the practice of Buddhism, which is, basically it's a form of psychotherapy. Through that practice, I was able to become extremely self-aware, to the point to where I'm very accepting of what's happening to me with the disorder, and it virtually makes it go away. I mean, you're still going to deal with depression, right? You're still going to deal with ups and downs. Your mood's going to swing more than other people, but you can really, really get it in a place to where people don't even recognize that you have it. You you have it, because even though you cope with it better and you deal with it, right? Like it doesn't go away, but like the doctors have told us for years and years that we can't, there's no way to, there's no way to put it in to, basically, there's no way to stop the episodes. And I'm here to tell the world that yes, you can. You absolutely, positively can get a mental fortitude that's strong enough to stop the episodes that come from bipolar. It takes a lot of work. I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to be the first person to tell you it's not easy. But I really do believe that through spirituality and the use of philosophies and the correct philosophical psychotherapies, I think that there's an adequate treatment that can be done on people with all forms of mental health. I think that what's interesting about it is I believe that it's the closest thing to a cure that we can actually describe. That's why like ecstasy, for instance, MDMA is so useful on PTSD, because when you look at it, what it does at a psychiatric level, what MDMA does is it gives somebody the ability to talk about their issues, things that's the major problem with somebody with PTSD, is that post traumatic stress disorder means that every time they go to talk about one of whatever it is that's causing this really really sad mental illness, it's like they relive it. It's like they're reliving it, and so they become literally deathly afraid, and they're back in that moment, but when they're on MDMA, after 3 treatments, it's curing PTSD, and that's a narcotic, but again, Western medicine, we don't make money on in particular American medicine. We don't innovate for cures, right? We're not trying to cure stuff because we want to treat it. Like that's like cancer. No, we don't want to get rid of your cancer. We want to halt it for 20 years. So it just stays where it's at. Makes you keep going back. And that's what they want to do. That's what I want to do with everything. That's like I've got herpes simplex 1 and 2, right? And I don't take any medication for it. I haven't taken medication for it, and I've had it for almost 10 years. I've had it for, no, it's, exactly 10 years, actually. I think I got it, it was about 25, 26, something like that, whenever I was diagnosed with it. And after the first year, it's almost like I don't even have it anymore. I mean, I go now like an entire year without having a breakout. Now, if you would have seen me like the first year, I mean, I had one every month, and ironically enough, I was taking the medication for it, and it didn't seem to make it go away any faster. But it did, like, I remember like how heavy my kidneys felt and stuff while I was on that stuff, but again, the cure that's being worked on, it's coming out of Europe actually, where they have, the Ministry of Health over in England, and they have what we call a socialized healthcare system, and that's not, they don't have a socialized healthcare system over there. They have because it's still private. You can have a private doctor's office. They have government paid health coverage over there, and they're changing up their healthcare system to mirror ours in a sort of a way. Used to be everybody would go to a hospital, even for clinic, which is crazy. But that's why if there was this famous thing over here in the U.S. where everybody was like, oh, the wait time to get to a doctor is 4 hours or 4 days in Europe, and it's like that's all bullshit. That's for like certain procedures. Yeah, there's longer waits. But like if you're having a heart attack, you get rushed right to the back. Same thing over here. I mean, you go to the hospital, we have like 30-minute, 45-minute, sometimes 2-hour wait times in the city. So I mean, it's like, that's pandering. But anyways, basically, one of the things that I've come to realize is that, what I learned about the existence of spirit through studying, the esoteric occult sciences and through my own spiritual and magical practices, because I do practice magic and spirituality. I mean, I practice manifestation. I believe that hexes and curses are real. I believe that protection, is very real, because if with my mind, if I can picture something that I want to manifest into my life, and I can picture it and imagine it in my mind, and it comes to fruition, which it does, then why would I think for 1 minute that I could not manifest a hex onto somebody? You absolutely can. Now, I mean, the way that those hexes may manifest themselves into this world and things like that are just very different depending on, the person or who might have, put this on them. But, I mean, I've seen backfires happen. Like my ex tried to. I remember she tried to curse me with coffin nails. I bought her from a witch shop, and I remember I walk in and she's like ties them in a cross and she goes to hand them to me, and I kind of I'd already, because like I was reading tarot actually. I wanted to, believe it or not, I actually want to start looking into using tarot to provide therapy for people, specifically with like BPD and other mental health disorders. Because through the use of tarot, I was able to know how she was going to react, or different things that she was going to do that day. And while I was actually reading tarot at that time period, we had a very stable relationship. It wasn't until I just lost my drive, and it was because of work that this happened. In hardship with my grandmother. My grandmother fell down and fractured her neck while on my watch. And it happened like she was in bed, and she normally doesn't ever get up as early as she did that one day. And she slipped in the shower, she hit her head, and fractured her neck, and I went into a full blown psychosis. Again, and it was just I was just under so much pressure. But while I was reading tarot at the time, her and I had gotten back together, and I was actually able to really break down one of her episodes one time, and effectively, say and act in the right manner that got it to stop. It just shut it down. That was like the first, I've been slowly, I was slowly destroying her ego over the period of us being together. One of the things about BPD is you'll find that they have this massive ego. It's huge, and she's a Leo already, so it's already big, But this was just double big, and I spent a lot of time losing my ego a long time ago. I'm not, I'm not arrogant anymore. I went through a major pitfall that destroyed my ego. My own arrogance really cost me a lot before I met my ex. But so, but her ego, man, was just, dear God. I think over time it's slowly getting destroyed, but it's just, God, BPD is a very adaptable disorder. Let me tell you, it's dude, but it's, there's a reason why psychiatrists don't want to work with people with BPD. That's one of my main reasons for wanting to open up this nonprofit, is because I want to provide a treatment facility that's going to be, the people working there are going to be people with these disorders. So when you come in to get treatment at this place, it's not going to be, you're getting treatment from a psychiatrist who's never had this disorder. Yes, I'm going to try and have one on staff, right? But you're going to get treatment from somebody like me, somebody who has effectively not had an episode in 8 years, 5 years, whatever, with no medication. Or if they have had an episode, it was very isolated. They're very isolated events, and they don't have to be hospitalized, and they handle it on their own and they don't show up in the news. Okay. Which that's very rare. They don't get arrested. Okay. They don't lose relationships and things like that. One of the things is about bipolar is that you have to understand that you're going to go crazy. Now, the way you react during that crazy is what's going to define whether or not you can put this thing in remission. Anyway, so I'm gonna get off here. I went way over time right now. So we're gonna, we'll get further into this tomorrow, and I'll do another episode. But yeah, man, please guys, don't forget, like, subscribe, share this podcast. Please share this podcast. I want to get this everywhere. I really want to get this nonprofit built. And so you'll be able to find on the Facebook and all that stuff. You'll be able to find a donations tab if you want to help out, if you want to donate towards this idea that I have, this and help me build the dream. I'll put my Cash App on there for people to do that. But I really want to build this facility So, the best way to get this podcast, since it's brand new, to get it out is going to be word of mouth. I'm going to be using my own money to market it, also, because I really want to make a change here, guys. Like, I really think that we have the ability to change the way that we deal with mental illness, and we don't just put people in a small padded room, with a shot in the ass and until they're not a problem anymore. We don't, segregate against people with mental disorders anymore. I want to change that. I want to see that change, and I think that we can. I think that we can really teach people the benefits of meditation and understanding your chakras and understanding what it is to have a mind state that not only will change your life, but it will change the way that your psyche manifests itself, the way it manifests itself into the world, the way that you think about things, the way that, the way you think about things directly controls the outcome of events and different things in your life. If you have a lack mentality, then that's what you're going to receive. If you think abundantly and you think about abundance and you picture abundance in your mind, that's what you're going to receive. There's something to be said for the power of the mind and its ability to control the energies right outside of ourselves. Anyways, thanks for listening, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this content. Once again, don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. Please put this everywhere you can. Share it for me. Let's get this blowing up. But thanks for watching the first episode of Polar Opposites. I'll see you guys on the next episode, and have a good one.